So last week, our last video, we made a false tongue for these new boots that I got. We're in the process of upgrading these to the to where they're as good as a very expensive pair of boots. If you remember, these are just a cheap pair of Wolverine. I think they're called Heron Kilty, I believe is the make and model. But they're like $89 boots. They're fairly cheap. But with a few simple modifications, we can upgrade them to the point where they're almost as good as, you know, a 3 or more, you know, expensive, like a pair of Danners or something like that. It's not going to be quite up to the level of like a pair of Whites or Wescos, but you know, it'll definitely be better than the majority of the stuff out there. So last time we made the false tongues. What that does is that protects the laces from abrading against the tongue of the boot. The one it comes with is only that long. We made one that was this long. What we're going to do this time is we're going to apply this. This is called KG's Boot Guard. It comes in 2 colors. Actually, it comes in any color you want as long as those colors are black or brown. So this stuff is essentially bed liner with Kevlar in it. See, it says with Kevlar. But what you do is you kind of put this stuff on the toe, and what it does is it keeps the leather from abrading through. It's almost a necessity if your boots are steel toe. These are not steel toe, but it definitely does. It makes the toe last a lot longer. I also like to put it on the heel right here, following kind of along this seam, and that keeps it from abrading back here, and it also makes this stay very stiff. A lot of times on leather boots over the years, you know, this part kind of softens up and begins to sag, and it's not as supportive. So if you put this stuff back here, and if you put it on the front, it really makes the leather last a whole lot longer. So what we're going to do is we're going to prep these, and we'll go through the process. The cool thing about this boot guard stuff is the instructions to apply it are printed right there. Now I make a few, well, I'm not gonna, we'll go through it, but I'm gonna make a few addendums to this because I've done it before, and there's things you can do to make the job look nicer and neater and cleaner, and that's gonna be essentially just taping off the parts with you know, regular old blue painter's tape. So let's strip these down, take the laces and the tongues out, and get them ready. So when you open up the package of the KG's Boot Guard stuff, it comes with 3 things. The little applicator thing, a little disc of sandpaper. I don't know the grit. I guess it's 80 grit. It says P80 on it. Because you're going to have to sand the leather where you want it to stick. And then, of course, the product itself. It comes with, you know, sealed and stuff, because this stuff will dry out. Supposedly you can use part of this and then put the cap back on, and it's supposed to last up to 7 days before you have to throw it out. But I've noticed that it really starts to thicken up after about 6 hours. So really, you kind of have maybe 1 day to do all. That's why if you're gonna do this stuff, it might be worth, because this will do several pairs of shoes. So it might be worth, you know, getting several pairs of shoes ready to go, and then putting this stuff on there all at one time. So, but this is the stuff. This is what it comes with. The first thing we're gonna do, and this is not in the instructions, is we're gonna mask it off and tape it off. It just makes it cleaner. It makes it look better. It's and it really kind of saves you from having to be super careful with the little applicator. As you can tell, this is not exactly a precision tool. So we're just going to use plain old blue painter's tape. It doesn't necessarily have to be super exact, but we're going to attempt to get it close anyway. So you basically just get your tape, tear you off and I do it in a bunch of small little sections. I don't you know, I don't try to put one long piece. I do it in little pieces because it's all going to come off in one shot. As long as you take the tape off while that's still liquid, it should leave you with a nice clean line. So what I like to do is, it's not very scientific. I will just simply take the boot, we'll start with this one, and get a rough idea of how much I want. So I will take that, kind of right about there is good, and I will put a piece of tape down, and I will attempt to get it as straight as possible and just kind of stick it down. And so this, once I complete the line and stuff, this is the part that will get the boot guard attached to it. But you definitely want them to be, the two boots to be the same amount of coverage there. So what I'll do is I'll just take something, whatever you got, shoelace will be fine, and I'll measure from like right here, from right there where that edge meets to the tape, and then tear me off another piece and do the same thing on the other side, kind of giving me a pretty good idea of where I want it. And then you just line them up together, and not perfect, so you can move it around and kind of get it close to where you want it. So if you look at that, that'll be pretty close. Nobody stands with their feet together usually, or at least big fat guys like me don't. So they're always going to be spaced enough apart to where if they're not perfectly exactly even, it's not going to be a big deal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this line and make a straight line all the way across, and then I'm going to go along the bottom here, and I'll show you that when I'm done. So these are taped off. You have to do the front, follow the curve, just tear off a bunch of little pieces and just continue to kind of follow it around. The closer you can get it down into that crease, the better. I just use the end of this and kind of wedged it in there, and doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be clean. You want nice clean lines all the way around there and there. The next part I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mask off this back part. The reason you want to go ahead and do that now instead of doing the front is you don't want to be trying to fiddle around with this while you've got wet boot guard on the front. So what we're going to do is basically just follow this line of stitching. I like to cover the stitching with the boot guard because it just kind of protects the stitching back here a little bit better, just following all this stitching. So I put the tape on the upper side of the stitching, and then I follow along the bottom just like I did up here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you that when I'm done. So this is how I do the back. You can do it however, but I like to do it this way. You just kind of put the paint on and follow the curves and all that stuff, so it's not that difficult actually. If you need to clean it up, just have like a little razor blade or something to clean it up with. I didn't really need to. Doing the curves seems to work a lot better if you just tear it off in little pieces and just kind of work your way around, just make them overlap and just do a little bit at a time. Remember how you overlapped it, because when you go to peel this tape off, if I start from this side, I'm just going to peel off this one little section. But if I start from this side, I can slowly peel off the whole thing, because this is the bottom, basically. Now comes the messy part. This is the part we're actually going to start getting it ready. So the first thing you need to do is we need to prep the surface. That's where the sandpaper comes in. Basically, just kind of give it a light sanding. You'll see it'll rough it up pretty significantly, because this is a pretty coarse grit of sandpaper that comes with the little kit. But basically just kind of scuff it up and get it rough. That way the boot guard will adhere to it and will work its way down into the leather. But all I'm doing is, luckily it comes with corners and stuff. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but just kind of get in there and get in the corners and Get in there, and I like to do the edges first. Work from the edges into the middle. But if you can see that, you don't have to do it real hard. I'm just kind of lightly brushing on it, and you see how easily this leather scratches up. That's one of the reasons we're putting this boot guard in the first place. So you just kind of continue to rough it up just like that. You don't have to the grain doesn't all have to go the same way. The scratches don't all have to go the same way. Just get in there and keep doing it, and do the whole. Well, I'll do this whole toe on camera, and then we'll come back, and then we get to do the real messy part. But basically, it'll lighten it up wherever you scratch it, because the scratches are lighter, and so that way, anywhere you see little dark spots or spots where it's where it's obvious that you haven't roughed it up, then just make sure that you get it. And do the edges especially, because you want it to stick very cleanly on the edges. So make sure you get the edges up here and especially down here on the bottom, because I know on some of them I've seen, on some YouTube videos of this stuff, I've seen people where it's peeled up right there at the bottom. So you really want to make sure that you have a nice surface for it to stick to right there along the edge. So do the same thing over here. When you're doing this part, be careful on the laces, on the stitching. You don't want to do it too hard on the stitching. So you can already see it's kind of coming up right there. So the stitching just kind of barely come across on the stitching. Luckily, when you put the boot guard on there, that will kind of stick that back down. That's one of the reasons I like going over the lacing instead of having underneath the lacing. So I'm going to do both boots and rough them up, and then we'll come back and we'll actually put the boot guard stuff on there. So now that the surfaces have been prepped, now we're going to apply the stuff. I would suggest highly putting some latex gloves on or something, because if this stuff sticks, it does not unstick. That's why I got the wax paper down. Because if you get this stuff on the wife's kitchen table, not that our kitchen table doesn't have stuff stuck to it already, but it does not come off. You essentially have to scrape it off. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off the little cover. See, that's never coming off. I'm going to have to change that blade out now. But it was an old blade anyway, so it's okay. Take this. I'm going to stick it back in the box just so it doesn't get on anything else. This stuff is super sticky. And be careful that you don't drop it once you've actually gotten the boot guard on it. I like to mix it up a little bit. You can actually see, can you zoom in on that? You can actually see kind of like the little chunkiness and stuff. And this is some of the Kevlar and the different stuff. I like to mix all that back in just to make sure that it's got all the solid particulates in there. And then you basically just kind of daub it on in a fairly I like to put a fairly thick coat on there. It says on the directions to do several thin coats, but because I have it taped off, I find it better to do one thick coat and then peel the tape off. Oh, my head's not in the way. If it is though, oh well, you get the idea. Just kind of spread it around as evenly as possible. What's gonna happen? So we had a camera malfunction, but here it is. This is still wet, but I took the tape off so that it would dry cleanly. Now I'm gonna peel the tape off of this front one. Be careful where you're sticking the boots and make sure you keep them on the thing or whatever. But figure out which side is the bottom side. I'm using my knife to kind of lift up the tape, and then you peel it, and if you did it on the correct side, the tape should all come off in one piece like that. And then I might stick it back on the box, and then figure out which side is the bottom over here. And actually the bottom is in the middle there, which is not a big deal. And you can see it has a nice clean line. That funky kind of whitish discoloration and stuff, that's just the paint peeling off the oils and stuff. That's all going to get put back in when we put our, Oben-Offs and other stuff into the leather to work it in to make it supple and stuff. And we'll do the back. Be careful where you go. So at this point we've taken the tape off. Don't worry about the discolored spots, that's no big deal. What I'm doing now is I want to continue to build up material right there at the toe. So what I do is I kind of wait for it to go matte and not be glossy anymore, and you just put a little more, just kind of smear a little bit more. It doesn't need to come all the way to the bottom, just kind of smear a little bit more on the toe, because that's where we really want to build up the material. And then the same thing on these parts. You want to build up material right there on the edge of the where that seam is. You really want to try to build up material right there. Just be careful not to get it, up where you don't want it. And so you can see where I missed a few spots right there. You just want to fill those in. You want to try to get it as thin as possible, because I've noticed when you do these other layers super thick, they tend to take forever to dry, like hours and hours and hours. Whereas if you do them thin, it'll take 10-15 minutes. It doesn't necessarily dry. It actually takes it like 12 to 24 hours to fully dry. But so we are going to let these dry overnight before we fool them. But you can wait a few, just a few minutes or whatever between coats. That way you're just kind of waiting for it to go matte, and then you put another coat on. See, you can see where the dry part is, where it's matte right there, and then where it's glossy right there. So that kind of gives you an idea of how you can build up the layers. So this is them drying now. It'll be, it'll probably go all evening or whatever to dry. I'll probably put these either in our bathroom with the vent on. I don't really want to put them outside because it's mosquito June bug time of year, and I don't want bugs getting all stuck in that stuff while it's drying. So I'll probably just put it in our bathroom with the exhaust fan on to get because it's kind of fumy a little bit. Not too bad, but not enough to where you'd have to do this outside or something. But enough to where it can irritate people. So I'm just going to probably put these in the bathroom. But once they're dry, then we'll look at some upgraded laces for these, because the ones that come with it are kind of garbage and they'll probably break within a week. And then we'll start the mink oil and Oben-Offs process. So You'll see these again in the next video. You'll see the finished product of the KG's boot guard in the next video. But thanks for watching and sticking through this, and post your own video with your boots with KG's if you got it. Thanks. Bye.